So when I looked at the title of, or the theme of today, it said Finance in Focus, the evolving intersection of finance, strategy, and technology. And it occurred to me that an evolution one imagines is a slow incremental change over a long period of time. And this is not so necessarily true now today about technology. It used to be true. And what I'd like to illustrate is how rapid changes in technology are happening and how you need to be at the forefront of those and to be adopting this new technology in your business if you wish to retain or develop a competitive advantage. So the evolution really can be spoken of today as a revolution. There's a traditional bell curve, which represents the adoption of technology over a period of time. And if you look at that, you'll see on the left-hand side, you'll see what are called the innovators, a very small percentage of the population, 2.5%. You then get the early adopters, and then you get this chasm. And the chasm is the point at which technology becomes popularized and people adopt it. And then you get into the early majority, the late majority, and then what are called the laggards. There's also a metric that's used, and that is to say, how long does it take from when a piece of technology is launched to the point at which 25% of the population are using it? And that's more or less at the beginning of that sort of early majority phase. Now, as a business, our business, Kilimanjaro, is dealing with products actually at both ends of the spectrum. We've got the MYOB advanced product, SaaS product, really just getting to that chasm point where it's starting to become popular and starting to be taken on board by early adopters. And we've got the EXO product, which was launched in the late 1990s. So the time frame from the beginning of the bell curve to the end in technology used to be about 30 years. EXO sits here. We do still sell the occasional new EXO site. We still sell a lot of services and additional licenses to existing EXO sites, such as yourselves. And the relevance of today's talk is how can you as an EXO user see out this product as you go, as it goes down the bell curve. You've probably got another, I'd say 7 to 10 years over here before the technology is completely overwhelmed and overtaken by a new innovation coming through. I was thinking about how I illustrate that and how this bell curve has been condensed over time. And I was trying to think of an analogy, and I am known for my farming analogies. So I went looking for a painting, and I came up with this painting by Anna Archer. And it was she lived sometime between 1859 and 1935. So I assumed that she would have had some memory as a child of peasants, or let's say subsistence farmers working in the field, no mechanization, and hard day slog in the hot sun. So this is really what agriculture looked like for a long, long time, even longer than that, because we know that man domesticated oxen as draft animals about 10,500 years ago. So you've got this enormous length of time, 10,500 years, up until probably the late 1700s, early 1800s, when nothing much changed in the world. You then started going through a period of change. 1780s, you had steam power discovered, huge changes in mechanical production. In the 1870s, you had electricity made. Can you imagine your life without electricity? I'll refer to that a little bit later again. The 1970s, we had electronics. The 2010s, we had big data, which was the thing. We spoke about AI and robotics then as well. Although when we speak about AI now, we're talking about a slightly different thing in terms of large language models and so on. And then in 2022, which is only a little bit more than 2 years ago, we started talking about remote access and virtual teams. And that's what we were referring to in saying we've moved from face-to-face user groups to having user groups online as well as face-to-face. Just was not technically feasible prior to COVID. So between if I go back one slide, between the 1780s and more or less the industrial revolution, nothing much changed. People then started adapting this new technology to their businesses, being steam-driven engines, steam-driven tractors. This is an 1860 model tractor. From 1860 to where we are now, 2024, things changed relatively slowly, slow incremental improvements in performance. This is me on my daily commute to my office in North Sydney. But I'm now coming back to that 25% mark. And if you look at this chart, you can see that it took approximately 45 years until 25% of the US population had adopted electricity. And you can see the length of time that it took has decreased and decreased. When you got to mobile phones over here, it was only 15 years that it took people to adopt the technology, or 25% to have adopted the technology. And with smartphones, you were looking at about 5 years to adopt the technology. And you've got to say, the reason that this happens is the benefit that the adoption of technology gives you. People are not doing this for fun. They're doing this because it adds value to their lives, or it adds efficiency to their businesses. Our business is called Kilimanjaro Consulting, and I had on my bucket list that I wanted to go to Tanzania and/or Kenya to see Mount Kilimanjaro, the highest mountain in Africa, which I'd named the business after. And I did that about 1.5 years ago, and I was very fortunate in having some interaction with the local Maasai tribe, who are essentially herdsmen. They look after their cattle. The last place you would expect to see technology. And yet, if you look closely at that Maasai warrior's belt, you'll see neatly tucked in behind his beading is an iPhone. And that I found absolutely remarkable. I also found this quote somewhere randomly on the internet that said a Maasai warrior on a cell phone in the middle of Kenya has better mobile communication than President Reagan did 25 years ago. And this gives you an indication of how quickly people take technology on board if there's a purpose to it. I'll add a little bit to that story, which I haven't gone through in many of the other user groups, but on that trip, I realized I have a digital camera, and I realized that I was running out of space on my little SD card. I hadn't even got to Mount Kilimanjaro yet. And I asked our guide if he thought there was anywhere that I could either buy another SD card or have some way of downloading to the internet or something like that. And I said, give us a few days. We're going through a small town, and he knows that there's a shop there that might sell it. So we ended up at this place called Karatu in Tanzania. This is a photograph that I took out of the window of the Land Cruiser. My guide said he's going in to buy the SD card because otherwise they'll triple the price for me as a tourist. And that's me with my SD card in the middle of nowhere. Technology impacting far wider than you would think. In terms of looking at that time frame and time scale, the 30th of November 2022 was a real milestone, because this is when ChatGPT was launched, and ChatGPT was what we all know now as a large language model, where you can instruct a computer using natural language to perform certain tasks and to mimic human actions. And as my illustration, moving from my bell curve of 30 years, in fact, moving from my domestication of oxen over 10,000 years to the Industrial Revolution measured in centuries, to smartphones measured in decades or half decades, you're now at a point where you measure progress in weeks. And it took ChatGPT literally less than 2 weeks to go from 0 users to 1 million users. Just an astounding adoption of technology. When I dug up this chart, I found something over here called DALL-E, and I didn't know what it was, and I did a little bit of research. And DALL-E actually lives in the same company as ChatGPT, and it's a large language model for graphics. So, which is very complicated, because for us as humans, you can look at a photograph like that and you can say there's something wrong. You know that's not real. A Yeti doesn't exist. And even though I'm looking at a picture of a Yeti and 2 people, I know there's something wrong there. When you move on to Del-E and you've asked Del-E to create a picture or create an image for you of Joe Biden and Donald Trump, you can look at that and you're not so sure if that is a real image or not. The same again with a snowman. And if you look at the rate at which this technology has changed, if you ask Del-E using a large language model to create for you images or faces of people that consumers may find trustworthy, these are not real people. These are artificial images of people. And that's where it starts getting really scary. If you think about, who is going to be using this? How are they going to be using this? The good and the bad and the ugly. So artificial intelligence then really refers to the simulation of human intelligence in machines. So the machines are programmed to mimic human actions, and we're trying to get to a point where AI can perform tasks that typically require human intelligence. We're not really there yet, but we're moving very rapidly in that direction. Machine learning is really a subset of artificial intelligence, and this you will see starting to seep into all sorts of apps and software and connected services that you may be using. It's available and it can add efficiency to your businesses. So it is worthwhile understanding what is there in your ecosystem and in the landscape. But I guess the point is, and the main point of today, is to say that technology, where you may have previously regarded this as, I've got an ERP system and I'm using it for accounts, technology is now at the absolute center of your business, whether you're looking at finance or operations or strategy, or whether you're looking at your people, your processes, and your systems. Technology is at the center. Complexity, risk, growth, technology is at the center of everything, and you need to start viewing technology as a really substantial part of your business that can add enormous value and enormous efficiency to your business. So this can now be done quickly, affordably, and with low risk. And this is what's changed. You've gone from the mega corporations having access to this in the same way that Ronald Reagan was the only person with access to mobile technology. Mega corporations had access. You now have access at low cost, low risk, very affordable. Now, this is an XO user group. So everybody here has their system running on a Microsoft SQL platform. And the Microsoft platform, the Microsoft platform can be integrated into what we call connected services very easily. Technology exists and has for a long time existed to do that. But what is changing is that these connected services sitting on the periphery over here now have artificial intelligence and machine learning embedded into them. So this is the way you would access these technologies easily and quickly. The next slide is really just a screenshot off the Kilimanjaro website, giving you an idea of the types of connected services that are out there and that you could be looking at. And you'll hear today, in any case, from Focus as one of those connected services of what their software can do and is doing. And Stephen, that's pretty much it from me.